Talking Arthur was always curious about new things. One day, while flying over the jungle, he saw a group of animals exchanging goods and services using colorful stones. So he contacted fintech CTOs from fantastic companies all around the world and collaborated with them to learn all about finance. Inspired, Arthur asked Insert CEO Vasil to help start a podcast to share their knowledge with the world. This is what you are watching right now, Fintech CTO Podcast. Enjoy.
Hello, fintech leaders and builders. This is our next episode of our Fintech CTO podcast. And I'm Vasil Solochuk from Insart. And today we have great guest, Todd Gower from Hiatus.
Todd Gower is a co-founder and CTO at a company called Hiatus. For the last decade, he was implementing the best solutions all over the market into the tech industry, working in a company called NewVox for the web applications, and also as a technology and analyst consultant for the WELL technologies, working on business process modeling, architecture data management, IT strategy formulation, and other things. For the last 8 years, Todd is working with Hiatus as a chief technology officer, where the company provides a personal finance app that allows to instantly find and manage recurring subscriptions and bills, monitor spendings, and track budgets.
I personally like this application because it's on the mission to improve the financial health of individuals. And my company Insart, we have a very similar mission. We help fintech to build fintech solutions that actually improve the financial health of companies and individuals. So I'm happy to have you here on our podcast. Thank you, Todd.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. So actually, let's start from the mission. So why it's very important actually to have this mission to improve the financial health of individuals, and how actually you do this with the help of Hiatus.
Yeah. So I like to describe Hiatus as kind of your wealth manager, your private banker for the 99%, because there's a certain, the majority of people in the United States don't have somebody telling them how to manage their finances, and a lot of people don't have the financial literacy to do that themselves. And so we built Hiatus to help that portion of the population that doesn't have somebody telling them how they should be managing their finances. And so the app itself is it's a B2C, right? And we help people by they connect their bank accounts, and we surface their subscriptions. What we found when we were building, and in fact, the original mission of Hiatus was simply to help people manage their recurring expenses. And so we track all of your subscriptions, everything from your Spotify, Netflix, to your utility bill, your cable and internet bill. And what we found is that a lot of people think about their finances in a monthly fashion. So, how am I going to have enough money to pay my car payment next month? And so we kind of built the app in that way, thinking about your finances more as kind of like a monthly cash flow statement, right? And so to that end, you when you're downloading the app and when you first sign up, you connect your bank account. We show you all your subscriptions, and we have various features in the app, such as like a budgeting feature. So for example, you can set a budget for restaurants, right? That's a good kind of discretionary spend that people often feel like they can cut back. And so you set a budget against your restaurant spend and can monitor it within the app. We also have some features that allow you to look at and aggregate your expenses in ways that we hadn't seen in fintech apps before. So for example, we have a feature called Spending Insights, where you can enter, let's say, Uber, right, the ride sharing company, but you can also enter Lyft and it'll aggregate or combine those two searches, and you can see how much you've spent at ride sharing, and say maybe I should take public transportation more. That's a way I could cut back. And beyond that, we also have a bill negotiation feature. So for your telecom bill, we're able to negotiate on your behalf and try and get you a better rate, and an automated subscription cancellation feature where we'll go out and, like, for example, cancel your Netflix subscription or any other that you may have. And so that's just, one example. Those two features are how you can save money. But I think also our mission is, how can we make people aware of how they're spending their money so they can make the decisions themselves on where they can cut back.
So there are lots of discussion about whether robo-advisors will replace the financial advisors. And as I understand, your application, it fits into the like a budgeting tool, personal budgeting tool. So my question is, like, do you think that there is a possibility that that kind of applications will totally replace financial advisors, or it will be like more augmented reality? So what do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm a little bit bearish on that idea. I don't think that people are going to stop being financial advisors anytime soon. I think that for most people that have pretty standard financial lives, financial situations, an automated approach could make sense and should make sense. I think, as I kind of mentioned before, there is sort of the 1%, the people in the top income bands and the top net worth bands that have very complicated financial situations. And so you have people who help them. And it's not just on, it's not like, how can I cut back on my spending? It's more, how can I save on my taxes, or how can I do interesting things to, to not have to, to take out loans. So I think there's always going to be people. I think there's always going to be financial advisors, at least in the foreseeable future. But I do think that for the vast majority of people, that an app or an automated approach could be the solution for them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so speaking about the financial health and financial journey, financial life of individuals, so your application actually sits in this budgeting tool bucket, let's say. So and this is like a ground. Okay, so you need to track your budget, you need to plan your spendings, you need to understand your incomes, you need to have these projections. So you need to be aware of what's going on, on your like income expenses side before and also set the financial goals, like some initial financial goals before jumping into building some maybe investment portfolio or something. So and my question is, what's your strategy in regards of investing? So do you have any investment capabilities in your applications or not? If not, then what is your strategy around that? Will you partner, or are you partnering with somebody here?
Yeah, we don't have any capability within the app for investing. I think the approach we've taken to date is more with partnerships. We don't see ourselves as trying to replace Robinhood or, whatever brokerage application you may use. Instead, we are kind of just that sort of, I like to call it kind of the read-only view into your finances. And then where needed, we partner with other fintech companies and direct our users to say, hey, it looks like you have a little bit of cash on hand. Would you like to open up a brokerage at, whatever, choose your brokerage. And that way it kind of keeps us sort of in the top level of sort of, we can see your finances and we can help you make the right decision, but we're not going to be your bank account. We're not going to be your brokerage account. We're not going to offer you a personal loan. And so I think it just makes more sense for us to help people cut back and direct them to the financial products that make sense.
So you mentioned that you're more into like partnerships, and in fintech world, it's all about like building integrations. So can you tell us maybe like what kind of integrations have you done with other applications, with other providers?
Sure. Yeah, with fintech partners specifically.
Yeah, so like with what kind of other financial services have you integrated?
Sure. Yeah. So as I mentioned, we surface like relevant financial products for our user base. And because we have that view into somebody's finances, we can see sort of what makes sense for them, right? As I mentioned before, like, if we see they have a little bit of extra cash on hand, then we have a partnership with a company that offers high yield savings accounts. And so if we see that somebody has some money, we'll say, why don't you open this high yield savings account? It's getting 4% interest. Here's what you could make on this money you have over the next year. And so we've kind of taken the approach right now. We're working with it's kind of just a distribution layer, and they sit in between us and a variety of different financial services companies. So the high yield savings account product that I mentioned, we talked to this company. They're kind of a middleman. They work with all the banks. So, whether it's Marcus from Goldman Sachs or it's Capital One, they have the relationships with the bank. They can kind of send them back to us, and then we don't have to go through diligence with all these banks one by one, because those kind of financial institutions move pretty slowly. And so when you have to establish a partnership with them, it can take a long time. It can be expensive. We're a startup, we're a lean team. And so we work with kind of the middleman in order to be more efficient with our time. So that company is a provider of savings accounts, credit cards, and personal loans. We surface those opportunities in our app for our user base through this partnership with them, they in turn partner with the financial services that companies themselves. One other financial product that we surface in the app is your auto insurance. I mean, most people don't go around and shop their auto insurance every 6 months to a year, but they should. And you can save money by going out and saying, okay, well, I have Progressive, but maybe I'm going to go to Geico and see if they're going to, maybe they'll give me a better rate. And so we surface that, and we kind of tell the user, hey, you should go and try to get a better rate on your auto insurance. Meanwhile, we have a partnership with a company called Trellis. And the way it works in the app is you can kind of go through that auto quote process in the app. You have to enter information about your policy, and then they will show you, they'll generate quotes for you and allow the user to kind of self-select if they want to go through and actually take out a policy with a new insurance provider.
So as I see, you actually suggest many different things, like whether to open the brokerage account or whether to buy some insurance through your partners. And you also mentioned that you have a kind of analytics around the expenses. So maybe can you tell us a little bit more? So what kind of expenses analytics do you have in Hiatus?
Yeah, so that was the spending insights feature that I mentioned before. And I think we have a unique take on how we can aggregate and sort of combine the user's transactions to look at their spend in interesting ways. The example I mentioned before is sort of, I want to look at all the ride sharing transactions that I've had. How much have I spent on Uber and Lyft? And when we were building this feature, we kind of did some market research. We didn't see anybody else who had this capability in their app. I haven't done any research recently, but another example that I like to give is it's food delivery, right? That's definitely a discretionary spend for a lot of people, and probably one that a lot of people would like to cut back on. And so you can type in Grubhub is one of the big delivery services, Postmates, and then sorry, not Instacart, DoorDash. The kind of the big three food delivery services in the US. You can combine those searches, and it'll show you how much you spent on food delivery over the last month, week, year, whatever. And then in addition to that, you can set a budget against it in our app, right? So that sort of search criteria you can set a budget against, which we think is unique. And then you can also do things like, there's sort of the more standard application of that, which is I want to look by category. And the categories are kind of like restaurants, groceries, home improvement, that sort of thing. And same idea, it's the exact same feature. And so you can search for restaurants and it'll show you how much you spent on restaurants over the last month, year. You can set a budget against it. But let's say that there's a false positive, or there's a transaction that's miscategorized. What we've seen when using budgeting features and using sort of these spending analytics and other tools is that there's big problems with them around transaction categorization.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's two types of problems, really. One is that transactions are miscategorized, and that's a tough engineering problem, just because there's so many different vendors out there in the world, and trying to match on those is just a big problem. And then there's another problem, which is there's transactions that are not really categorizable. So Amazon, for example, you can buy anything from Amazon. Where does that transaction fall in terms of a category? And so we built this spending insights to sort of circumvent that problem. And so, you can do those searches and set your budgets that way. You can also remove transactions. So you can do like a negation search. So the example I like to give is I want to see how much I spent at Amazon, but I don't want to include my Amazon Prime membership. So you search for Amazon, and then you can do sort of a negation search to remove Prime. And so that's how we think about setting budgets. It's not by a category, which oftentimes is miscategorized. And yeah, you can go through and like there's budgeting tools where you can be a little bit more involved, and it requires a lot more upfront setup. You have to go through and kind of recategorize stuff on your own. But we're sort of looking to be the budgeting tool for the people who don't want to do that. For people who have managed their budgets in Excel previously, we're probably not the tool for them, because those people are really into personal finance. They'll go and find some online tool that requires more setup, but also will give you more in the end. Our approach is more, let's make this super easy. When day one, when you get the app, you can start using it. It'll provide value to you. So that's kind of how we think about that.
So I like, like in the financial budgeting applications, I like the approach when there are this kind of embedded features that provide you kind of insights about your financial situation. And so you mentioned about financial literacy. So just interesting, are you thinking about like implementing something like, hey, you analyze the budget, so you have all these transactions, and based on the specific situation, you can, suggest what to do, what not to do, like maybe analyze some behavior patterns of the user, and provide, some financial literacy advice, like around his budgeting. So do you have any kind of plans to make this like more sophisticated tool?
Yeah, we would like to, and we've already sort of begun that effort to a certain extent. Not specifically around budgeting. I think there's probably a big opportunity for us to to expand sort of our recommendations around budgeting. But the recommendation approach that we've taken so far has been more focused on directing people to like financial products that can help them improve their financial situation. And the example that I like to give is if we see somebody is taking on debt on a credit card, which is honestly, it's just a financial mistake because the interest rates are so high, it's revolving debt, and it just doesn't, for the majority of people who get into that situation, they have a lot of trouble getting out of it. So if we see that somebody is paying interest on a credit card, then we will recommend that they take out a personal loan or they go through some sort of debt refinance program to try to get a better grasp on their debt. So we're just kind of dipping our toe into that more of the kind of recommendation approach. And I think you bring up a really great idea around budgeting. And so this isn't exactly what you asked, but sort of one thing that we have thought about doing before, and I think are likely to build very soon, is setting kind of default budgets for people. So because we can see their spend in certain categories, we could say, well, most people in your income spend this much on restaurants. Why don't we set a default budget for you, and it'll automatically start tracking their spend against that category.
So to me, like all the fintech applications, they are about the user experiences. And we talked about several use cases, like how to suggest, some insights around the budgeting. So, but my question is, like, how actually you work with the feedback of your users, to improve the user experience? So,
yeah, I mean, it's such an important part of product development, right? You have to make sure that your users that you are bringing on are satisfied with the product. I also think it's a great way to source new ideas for things that you want to build. Now, I'm not going to say that's the only way. I think a lot of times consumers will tell you that they want something, and maybe they don't actually know what they want. And I think when you're dealing with B2C, when you have a lot of consumers, it's sort of a different approach than, let's say, if you were B2B. Then like going out to your customers and saying, what should we build, makes a lot of sense. But with us, we have a lot of people on the platform, and trying to distill out what the most important things we should work on is a little bit more challenging. So you kind of have to balance, right, your user feedback, at least in terms of your product direction, with with what you think the best direction is for us, or what I think the best direction is for us. But in terms of your specific question, yes, absolutely. I think we have done several user sessions and have used that feedback to mostly improve upon what we have. I wouldn't say we've used it as much for thinking about our roadmap or thinking about what we're going to build next. It's more of like, okay, this user isn't able to use our budgeting feature the way that they want to. All right, well, let's make changes to it. And so that's where I see a lot of value, especially in a company like ours that is B2C, is making sure that everything that you've built is satisfying your users' needs.
So my experience is mostly about building B2B fintech SaaS platforms, and to me, it was always like the product management in B2C fintech. It was always a magic for myself. So because when you're into B2B, it looks pretty simple. So you just need to ask your clients what are their current needs, and you build your product roadmap based on the requests and feedback from your existing clients, and maybe with from some potential clients with whom your sales team is talking right now. But in B2B, so you have lots of users with lots of feedback, with lots of opinions, what is good, what is not. So what would be your best practices that you can tell us about to manage the product backlog in the B2B, in B2C?
B2C, yeah. Yeah, I think, like I said, it's kind of a balance. Yes, you want to do user research. And to a certain extent, you can use that to help you think about your backlog and your future roadmap. I think also it's a lot of market research, seeing what's happening in the industry and using that to drive your product roadmap. And then I think a lot of it is also sort of, we surface a lot of ideas internally because we're interested. A lot of our employees are on the app themselves, and they use it and they get value out of it. And so a lot of ideas are kind of surfaced internally. So it's three primary things that we use to drive our product roadmap. It is user research, and it's market research, and it's internal ideas.
I have seen that you actually have like a generic subscription and also like a premium subscription. So what's the difference between them?
Yeah, we have a freemium model, right? So you can get the app, download it, and you get access to a set of features that you don't have to pay for. So that's going to include a lot of the digital features, right? Your budget, the budgeting feature, the spending insights, all of the analytics around your subscriptions. So it'll show you your subscriptions. You can kind of see how much you've spent on various bills and subscriptions, and see that over time on charts and graphs and stuff like that. But we also have our premium plan, which is our paid product, and that gives you access to our bill negotiation feature that I mentioned before, where we'll actually go out and try and get you a better rate on your telecom bill, whether that's AT&T or Comcast or whatever it may be. And then the automated subscription cancellation feature is also part of that premium plan. So we don't have 100% coverage of all the vendors that we have on the platform today, but we have a lot of subscriptions that people can cancel automatically through the app. Netflix, as I mentioned before, is one of them. And so, you open that up, you submit a little bit of information, you go, and it'll just automatically be canceled for you. So those are the two main features on our paid plan, and everything else you get for free.
All right, cool. So also to build a great user experience, it's very important and like to select the right technologies to implement the application, and you need to be pretty careful here. And as I understand, you have built the application using like the Swift on iOS, and you have this the client for iOS, and you use like Node.js and React for front end. So can you tell us a little bit more? So why have you selected those technologies? What is beneficial using those technologies against maybe some others to build that kind of application?
Sure. Yeah, so the first app that we released was iOS. We've kind of always been iOS first as a company, mobile first, certainly, and iOS first. And so that meant a native app. The cross-platform stuff I personally haven't worked with it. I'm a little bit biased against it, but I know it's got a strong following, and a lot of people like it too. So,
okay.
So yeah, we built iOS first. Swift was kind of just coming along, just sort of reaching a certain point of stability where we felt comfortable building the app in Swift. And so that's why we selected it there.
Mhm.
And then on the back end, Node.js has a big following, and a lot of people like it. It's super dynamic, and we are also a serverless architecture,
Mhm.
and so there's kind of a there's some nice synergies that you get working with Node.js and serverless on AWS. But we have recently moved from kind of vanilla JavaScript to TypeScript,
Mhm.
and that's brought a lot of kind of gotten rid of the whole class of problems that we dealt with vanilla JavaScript, just having to deal with types across different code bases or repos. And then React on the front end web app, that is kind of same idea. We kind of just are looking for the technologies that are new, but also are at a point in their life cycle where they are stable
Mhm.
and they have a good community of developers to support them and also to work on them, because that makes recruiting easier. If you have a bigger talent pool of people who know how to work with React and JavaScript and Node and Swift, and it also makes people more excited to work on newer technologies. Um, and then also, you didn't mention, but we do have a native Android app that we released very recently, actually in the last 12 months. And that's built in Kotlin, which is, again, kind of the up and coming, but it is at a point where it's very stable. And so we felt comfortable working with it, and has made people excited to come on board and work on the team and get to work on those newer technologies.
So why actually your strategy is to build the native mobile applications rather than to use some kind of framework like React Native or something like that to have this cross-platform mobile apps?
Yeah, I mean, part of it was just circumstances, because we built our iOS app in 2017, and we didn't build our Android app until this year, so quite a bit later. And it didn't make sense for us to go back and replace our iOS app that is stable and has a lot of features in it. Um,
Mhm.
so that's sort of the circumstantial reason. And then I've also anecdotally heard that hiring for cross-platform tooling can be a little bit more challenging, because
Mhm.
it's not only you have to know the native platforms themselves, you have to know iOS, or you have to know Android and the different components and features that those platforms give you. But you also have to know JavaScript, and you have to know React if we're talking about React Native. Um, and so that just kind of shrinks your talent pool. And so it just didn't make sense for us when we were building our Android app to go that route.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a smart decision. So you need to think in advance, like what kind of technology you would like to use to be able actually to scale your engineering team as you grow. And as you as I understand, you have grown, like from engineering the application into more management role right now. So can you tell us a little bit more how your role as chief technology officer evolved during the recent years when you started with Hiatus, and what the difference with the current role?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm the technical co-founder, so I built the minimum viable product of the app, um, and then as we started to grow, we raised some money, and that allowed us to build out our engineering team. And I didn't come from a technology. Well, let me go back. I didn't come from a software development background. My previous job was in consulting,
Mhm.
and so I've kind of had to learn along the way. And as we brought on the team, it meant learning how to manage software developers. And so, I've done quite a bit of reading and just trying to figure out the best way. Agile was something that I kind of knew about, but not something that I'd ever led. I hadn't led an Agile team before I worked here at Hiatus. And so for me, it was a lot of research, a lot of learning to get up to speed on that. Um, And, I had good mentors. Some of the early years that we brought on were very helpful to me in sort of helping me expand my management skills. But certainly, yeah, today, I don't really write any code. I might write something every month or two. That's not really like a user facing thing, maybe just sort of a configuration or something like that. But mostly my time is spent managing the team and making sure that they have what they need in order to operate as smoothly and as efficiently as possible. And I like to talk about sort of the difference. And I love coding. I think it has this sort of instant satisfaction that you get when you write code that like just works and does everything you want it to do. It's really gratifying, and you can see it right away. And then on the management side, everything takes a little bit longer. But I think what you do to improve your team also has results. It gives you that gratification. It just happens on a longer time frame. And so for me, it's been gratifying to kind of see how the work I've done to help manage the team can speed us up. And also because you have leverage, right? It's people working for you can get more done than you could do by yourself. And so you have kind of that 1 to 6 or 1 to 10 or however many people on your team you have, that sort of leverage. And so the things that you can get accomplished are much bigger. Now they happen on a slower time frame, and you don't get that sort of instant feedback loop that you do when you're writing code. But you do get feedback, and it can happen on a much bigger scale.
So how big is the team right now, the engineering team?
Yeah, so our team is 7 engineers, or 6 engineers, 1 product manager. So we're still pretty lean, still a small team, but we have a really good team, and we're sort of at that point where everybody can kind of get their work done, and we don't have to deal with kind of a lot of process overhead or communication overhead. But also it's big enough where we can still get a lot of stuff done.
Mm-hmm. So what at this size of the team, so what do you think is the biggest risk of not delivering? So what is your experience with that?
With a team size of 7 people?
Yeah, like 7 people. So what would you name like a biggest challenge for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, one of the risks I think is missing out on an opportunity. When I talked previously about how we think about product development, one of them is looking externally and looking at what the market's doing, market research, right, and what other companies are doing. And so, if something comes along that's really important, recently all the ChatGPT and large language model stuff has been very much in the news. And so, when you have a small team, you can't all of a sudden like come up with this really big feature that utilizes something that you've heard about externally and then incorporate it into your product right away. Right. So, we don't have people who have free time to like go and do research on newer technologies unless we're very intentional about it. So we have our product roadmap. It's pretty well defined, which with a team the size that we are, we don't have a lot of capacity to do sort of, I don't want to say less impactful, but maybe more exploratory type of research, product or research and engineering.
So what do you think? Would you prefer to let your team grow in size or stay in the same capacity and deliver with the same capacity, but like steadily stable, like have a steady, stable processes? So because like what I have seen that sometimes CTO, they they see this as like a challenge. Yeah, like when you grow, you need to rearrange the team structure, rearrange the processes. And if you grow pretty fast, sometimes you can deliver less than with the smaller team. So just interesting. So what's your approach? What's your strategy in terms of growing the team, not growing the team? What should be the pace of the growth? What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, pros and cons, right? You kind of hit the nail on the head there. There are a lot of pros to having a small team. And like mentioned before, you know, the bigger the team gets, the more communication overhead you have. And especially with a remote team, you know, we're not all in one place. It requires a lot of effort to keep everybody on the same page in a remote world. And so, you know, when you keep the team the size that we have it, you can kind of minimize that. We're at a point, you know, I don't know if people are familiar with kind of like the pod mentality that Spotify came up with, or the pod team size, where, you know, you have a pod with your engineers, product manager, a designer. And so we're kind of at the team size where we have one pod, and it's a front-end engineer for all of our apps, right? iOS, Android, web, and then 2 back-end engineers, product manager. And so the minute that you introduce another pod, then you have to coordinate that. You have to get the teams to coordinate and make sure that they're not stepping on each other's toes, or they're, you know, doing work that is not overlapping. And so, yeah, I mean, that's one of the pros, one of the benefits of having a small team. Now, of course, there's benefits to having a larger team too, right? Like you can just get more done. But for me, it all kind of comes down to economics. And, you know, we have not gone sort of the venture capital route and gone out and raised a ton of money. We have raised external capital. And so in that sense, we're sort of resource constrained in terms of how quickly we can grow the team. But also sort of getting back to the pros and cons, like one of the benefits, I think, to being resource constrained is it makes you be really deliberate about what you want to build. It makes you really question sort of your assumptions and think about, okay, is this the best thing for us to be working on right now? And so in that sense, you know, it's kind of nice to be resource constrained.
So you mentioned that you have a mentor, which I personally believe is a really great idea to have a personal mentor. And so why do you think it's actually useful to have a mentor, and also how to select the one?
Yeah. So we have a product manager on our team, and I think it's a very critical role within the team. Kind of getting back to your point about how do we think about product development? Well, it's those 3 things. It's market research, it's user research, and it's servicing ideas internally. But there's got to be one person who's in charge of that. There's got to be one person who's doing the market research, who's doing the user research, because it's a full-time job. And so having that product manager on the team is really important, not only for thinking about product development, but also for making sure that the team is running efficiently and they have what they need. There's a lot of work to get requirements spec'd out and you know, get designs fleshed out. And so if you don't have somebody like that, then I think you can operate really inefficiently. You know, if an engineer is sitting around for a couple hours, or they have to switch to a different task because the work isn't ready, like that's really time consuming for them. And you know, engineers are they're expensive people to have on the team, and so you want to make sure that you're getting the most out of them. And to answer your question about how to hire the right one, you know, we just brought on our product manager about a year ago. I think it was overdue for us. I wish we had done it earlier, but the hiring process is still pretty fresh in my mind. And I would say I was looking for somebody who was was analytical, who was organized. That's two very important traits in my mind. I think also, to a lesser extent, being familiar with the industry that you're in. Again, I don't think that's critical, because a smart and analytical person can get up to speed on any industry if they want to. But it does help if you're trying to ramp up somebody really quickly, that they kind of already understand the space. And, on sort of the technical skills, I think they should be familiar with your design tools. They should be familiar with project management tools like Jira or whatever you use. And then it's great for them to have some data analysis skills as well, whether that's SQL or, some kind of drag and drop analytics tool.
So back to the start of the company. So you mentioned that you have an experience as a consultant before. So to me, it looks like some turning point when you decided to join the company as a founder and CTO. And I know that there are lots of people in the industry who are not founders, but are thinking about launching their new company and joining as a technical founder. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience with the decision making at this point of time? And what was the the most hard criteria to evaluate whether to join as a founder and CTO or not to do this, or proceed with the other career options?
Yeah. I mean, for everybody, it's very dependent on their personal situation, right? For me, it came at a time when I'd been doing a consulting job for 5 years, I want to say. And so I'd gotten a lot of good experience. And my co-founder, my partner, it was his idea. He came to me with the idea. And so he approached me like at just the right time, where I was ready to try something new. And, personally, I have a technical degree, right? I studied computer science. And so I wanted to get back to writing code. And so for me, it was kind of like, it just made sense. And I was ready to sort of commit, go all in. But, I think it is easier to do if you have less strings attached, so to speak. It's harder to do if you have a lot of time, if you have a lot of commitments, whether that's kids or financial commitments, that sort of thing. So I think that's why you see a lot of founders who, start companies in their 20s or early 30s. Yeah, I think, like for me, like I said, it kind of came at the right time. And yeah.
So I personally think that when you found the company and you're still young, so you have less commitments, but from the other hand, you have less experience, and the chance for success, yes, it's still there, but probably it's lower when you than when you already have expertise, like a technologist, like a leader. You have understanding of business domain, and so at this point of time, you can leverage all your experience actually to build something new, and be passionate about this. And as you mentioned, it always could be some right time when somebody approach you, or you approach somebody, and you find the right partner, and with the right partnership, you can actually launch some new venture. All right. So to wrap up our conversation, so right now the situation, with the financial, situation, like here in the United States and all over the world, so unstable. Let's say there are lots of challenges. Fed rate is growing, so we have like some issues with like on the mortgages side. We have some unstable markets, so lots of challenges like for your personal situation, personal health. So taking into account this kind of uncertainty that we have right now, so what is the next big move for Hiatus actually?
Yeah, that's a good question. We've kind of taken this past 12 months has been sort of looking internally and focusing on all of the features and all of the functions that we have in the app and making sure that they're as good as they can be. And then, we're kind of reaching the end of that. I think opening up the door to potentially another big feature. The banking as a service space was really hot a few years ago. It seemed like every company was sort of launching a debit card. I don't necessarily see us going that way, but we may get more into, I don't know, maybe some like more debt focused products within the app, or kind of, as you mentioned, we may look at investing. But it's hard to say sort of what the big thing in the future for us right now is.
All right, cool. So Todd, thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and for everybody who are watching us today, please don't hesitate to download the Hiatus application. So you can Google it, but we will also have the link in the description to this video. So I encourage everyone to download the application and to try it. It's really great application. And also, I encourage everyone to put your comments below this video and tell us what are the most desirable features for this kind of budgeting and personal finance tools that are still not covered on the market. And thank you for watching us today. It was me, Vasil Soloshuk from Insart, and Todd Gower from Hiatus. And thank you. And let's keep building fintech together. Stay tuned.
Still watching us and have not subscribed yet? Let's fix this. Also, don't forget to like this video and take a look at the other episodes we have. See ya!